Ever wondered how medieval justice systems used execution as both punishment and public spectacle? Historical court records reveal methods designed not just to kill, but to demonstrate state power through prolonged suffering. These weren't random acts of cruelty, they were calculated legal procedures that reflected medieval concepts of justice, deterrence, and divine retribution. Ready to examine these dark chapters of legal history: 1. Hanged, drawn, and quartered, reserved for high treason in medieval England. This method combined multiple forms of punishment in a calculated sequence, designed to maximize both physical suffering and public humiliation. The condemned was first dragged through streets, tied to a horse, ensuring public shame before reaching the execution site. The hanging phase involved partial strangulation. Executioners carefully avoided complete death, maintaining consciousness for subsequent procedures. While still alive, the victim was disemboweled, with organs burned before their eyes as crowds watched. Finally, the body was divided into quarters, with parts displayed in different city locations as warnings to potential traitors. This elaborate ritual served multiple legal purposes: punishing the crime, demonstrating royal authority, and deterring future treasonous acts. The method remained legally sanctioned for over 500 years, with detailed court records documenting its use against political prisoners and rebels throughout medieval and early modern England. 2. Breaking on the wheel. The Catherine wheel involved systematically breaking the victim's limbs while strapped to a large wooden wheel, creating a prolonged execution that could last several days. The wheel was designed with strategic gaps that allowed bones to break cleanly when struck. Between bone-breaking sessions, victims remained conscious and alive, experiencing escalating pain as shock and blood loss gradually weakened their systems. This agonizing process meant death could take days to arrive, during which crowds often gathered to witness the spectacle. The method was particularly favored in Germanic regions and France, where detailed legal codes specified exactly how many bone breaks constituted proper execution for different crimes. Court records show this method was reserved for the most serious offenses, including murder, highway robbery, and crimes against the church or state. 3. Boiling alive. Medieval courts sentenced poisoners, counterfeiters, and coin forgers to death by boiling, involving submersion in cauldrons of boiling water, oil, or other liquids. This method was particularly common during Henry VIII's reign and was practiced across France, Germany, and England between the 13th and 16th centuries. The execution could be performed 2 ways: immediate immersion in boiling liquid, or placing the victim in cool liquid that was gradually heated to boiling point. Historical records from Henry VIII's court document cases where victims survived up to 2 hours before succumbing. The method served legal purposes beyond mere execution. It was specifically chosen for crimes involving deception or betrayal of trust, with the prolonged nature intended to match the severity of violating societal bonds. Medical knowledge of the time meant executioners understood how to maintain consciousness during the initial phases, ensuring maximum deterrent effect for witnessing crowds and potential criminals. By sawing. Medieval sawing involved suspending victims upside down, slowly cutting through their bodies with large saws, creating executions that potentially lasted several days. The inverted position was medically calculated increased blood flow to the brain, maintained consciousness longer than would occur in upright positions. Executioners typically began sawing from the groin area, working downward through the torso. Often the sawing stopped at the stomach level, leaving victims partially bisected but alive, dying slowly from blood loss and shock over extended periods. This method was particularly associated with charges of adultery, witchcraft, and infanticide in various European regions. Legal documents show the method was chosen for crimes considered violations of natural order, with the prolonged dying process representing divine judgment. The public nature of these executions served educational purposes, teaching moral lessons about societal expectations and consequences of transgression. According to medieval legal philosophy and religious doctrine. 5. Flaying involves systematically removing skin from the living body using sharp blades, creating one of the most prolonged execution methods documented in medieval courts. Executioners typically began at the head and worked downward, maximizing pain through exposure of nerve endings while maintaining victim consciousness. The process required considerable skill to rapid removal, caused death from shock. While proper technique could extend dying over days, pre-boiling certain body parts made skin removal easier and more precise. Death ultimately resulted from shock, blood loss, infection, or hypothermia, rather than the flaying itself. This method was employed by various medieval European groups. Alongside historical precedents from Assyrian, Aztec, and Chinese legal systems, legal scholars argue flaying served symbolic purposes, literally stripping away the criminal's humanity while demonstrating absolute state power over the individual body. Court records indicate this method was reserved for the most heinous crimes, particularly those involving betrayal of sacred trusts or violations of religious law. 6. Impalement medieval. Impalement involved forcing large, sharpened stakes through victims' bodies, creating slow deaths that could extend over several days while serving as public warnings. The method required precise positioning to avoid immediate fatal damage to vital organs, allowing maximum suffering duration. Stakes were typically inserted through the rectum or vagina, with skilled executioners angling penetration to miss heart and lungs initially. Gravity gradually forced bodies downward along the stake, creating progressive internal damage over hours or days. The public display aspect was legally significant. Impaled bodies remained visible for extended periods, serving as deterrent warnings to potential criminals. Medieval legal codes specified impalement for crimes considered violations of natural order or divine law. Historical records show this method was particularly favored in Eastern European regions, where detailed execution protocols ensured maximum public impact while maintaining legal, procedural requirements established by church and state authorities. 7. Crushing. Medieval crushing devices slowly compressed victims' heads or bodies using mechanical pressure systems designed to extend dying over hours while maintaining consciousness. Head crushing involved placing the victim's skull in specialized devices that gradually tightened, applying pressure to temples and crown simultaneously. Broke under increasing pressure. Body crushing used similar principles, with victims placed under heavy stones or mechanical presses that gradually increased weight, suffering duration for serious crimes. Legal historians note crushing was often combined with torture procedures, serving dual purposes of information extraction and ultimate execution. This method reflected medieval legal philosophy, emphasizing proportional punishment. The gradual destruction matching perceived gradual corruption of the criminal's moral character according to theological and judicial reasoning of the period. 8. Burning at the stake. Burning alive was a standard medieval execution method, particularly for heretics, witches, and those guilty of religious crimes. Lit simultaneously at multiple points for thorough burning. Executioners controlled burning speed through fuel selection. Green wood created slower, more prolonged burning, while dry materials caused rapid death from smoke inhalation. Medieval legal codes distinguished between immediate burning and gradual roasting, with procedures specified according to crime severity. The method served religious purposes beyond mere execution, symbolically purifying the condemned while demonstrating church authority over spiritual matters. Consequences of heresy and moral transgression. Historical documents show burning was particularly common, during which trials and religious persecution periods. The public nature reinforced social cohesion around religious orthodoxy while warning potential heretics about consequences of challenging established church doctrine and community moral standards. 9. The brazen bull. The brazen bull was a bronze torture device shaped like a bull, with victims placed inside, while fires were lit beneath, slowly roasting them alive. The device included acoustic engineering that transformed screams into bull-like sounds, adding psychological torture for both victim and audience. Prevented immediate suffocation, extending suffering duration. Executioners controlled temperature through fire management, creating gradual heating that maximized pain while preventing quick death from smoke inhalation. Against rulers, historical accounts describe elaborate ceremonies surrounding brazen bull executions, with religious officials present to provide last rites and witness procedures. The device represented medieval technological sophistication in execution methods, combining metallurgy, engineering, and medical knowledge to create calculated suffering. Legal documents from various European courts specify brazen bull protocols. indicating standardized procedures rather than random torture. The method served propaganda purposes, demonstrating royal power through technological superiority and creative punishment capacity. 10. Crucifixion. Crucifixion remained practiced throughout medieval Europe, involving nailing victims to crosses and leaving them to die from exposure, dehydration, and exhaustion. Medieval crucifixion adapted Roman techniques, with specific legal procedures governing nail placement, cross construction, and timing protocols, and respiratory failure, as body weight made breathing increasingly difficult. The method held special religious significance in Christian medieval society, symbolically connecting criminal punishment with Christ's sacrifice while emphasizing the ultimate consequence of rejecting divine law. Legal codes specified crucifixion for particular crimes, including blasphemy, persistent heresy, and certain forms of murder. Historical records document detailed crucifixion procedures. The public display served educational purposes, teaching religious lessons about sin consequences while reinforcing church authority. Systematic legal application, the method represented intersection of legal punishment, religious symbolism, and medical knowledge in medieval justice systems. 11. Slowly lowered onto the pointed tip, creating gradual impalement through body weight and gravity. Medieval executioners controlled descent speed through pulley systems, maximizing suffering duration while preventing immediate fatal penetration. Internal damage over hours or days, death resulted from blood loss, infection, shock, or internal organ perforation, depending on positioning and descent rate. Legal records show the method was particularly associated with crimes involving sexual transgression, heresy, and violations of religious vows. While being powerless to prevent gradual descent, medieval craftsmen developed specialized Judas cradles with adjustable components, indicating systematic production rather than improvised torture. During execution procedures, the method represented medieval technological innovation in execution design, combining mechanical engineering with medical knowledge to create calculated punishment matching perceived crime severity through symbolic sexual violation. 12. The Iron Maiden. The Iron Maiden was a coffin-like device lined with spikes, designed to pierce victims without immediately striking vital organs, creating prolonged dying through multiple puncture wounds. Medieval versions included carefully positioned spikes that avoided heart, lungs, and major arteries during initial closure, allowing extended suffering before death. The device required precise engineering spike placement calculated to maximize pain while preventing quick death from blood loss or organ failure. Victims were sealed inside while spikes gradually penetrated flesh, creating numerous wounds that caused death through infection, blood loss, or shock over hours or days. Legal historians debate the Iron Maiden's actual medieval usage versus later fictional embellishment, though court records document similar spiked devices in various European jurisdictions. The method served psychological purposes beyond physical torture. The coffin shape symbolized burial, while spikes represented divine judgment, piercing the criminal's corrupted body. Archaeological evidence suggests limited actual usage, with most documented cases involving political prisoners or religious heretics. The device became legendary, partly through later romanticization of medieval torture. Though some authentic examples existed in specialized court facilities, medieval execution methods fundamentally differed from modern capital punishment in purpose, procedure, and philosophical foundation. Medieval executions served multiple functions beyond mere killing. They were performances of state power, religious ritual, and social education designed to reinforce hierarchical authority structures. Modern execution systems prioritize efficiency, humanity, and minimizing suffering, reflecting Enlightenment values, emphasizing individual dignity and proportional punishment. Medieval legal systems recognized 222 capital crimes in 18th century Britain, including theft, tree cutting, and poaching, compared to modern restrictions typically limited to murder and treason. The medieval approach viewed execution as community ritual involving religious ceremonies, crowd participation, and moral instruction. While modern methods emphasize clinical efficiency and minimal public involvement, the evolution reflects changing concepts of state legitimacy, moving from absolute monarchical authority requiring spectacular displays to democratic systems, emphasizing due process and constitutional protections. The shift represents broader cultural transformation from viewing public punishment as entertainment to understanding execution as regrettable necessity. Requiring dignity, preservation, medieval execution methods reveal the complex intersection of legal systems, religious beliefs, and social control mechanisms that shaped European society for centuries. These practices served as crucial tools for emerging states to establish authority and maintain social order in the absence of modern policing and surveillance systems. While shocking by contemporary standards, they reflected sophisticated understanding of psychology, medicine, and social dynamics applied toward maintaining governmental control and religious orthodoxy. The gradual abolition and reform of these methods marks humanity's evolving recognition of individual dignity and proportional justice principles that continue shaping modern legal systems. Understanding this dark history provides crucial context for appreciating contemporary human rights protections and the ongoing global debate over capital punishment's role in civilized society. These historical examinations offer sobering lessons about power, justice, and the capacity for both cruelty and progress in human institutions. Subscribe for more historical analysis, exploring how past societies grappled with fundamental questions of justice, punishment, and governmental authority that remain relevant today.